Hey guys! Today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. There are countless reasons why a relationship might turn into a love triangle. One of the most common is the gradual loss of emotional connection and passion. When feelings start to fade, some individuals begin seeking that missing spark elsewhere. Often, one of the people involved is completely unaware of what's really going on. These situations usually arise during moments of personal crisis or as a way to retaliate. Regardless of the reason, this kind of dynamic creates intense emotional strain and the real risk of losing both relationships at once. The story of Meredith Sullivan sent shockwaves across the nation and became one of the most widely discussed cases of 2018. Meredith Sullivan, later known by her married name, Chapman, was born on January 17, 1985, in Newark, Delaware. She was the youngest of three siblings in the family of Andrew and Faye Sullivan. Meredith grew up surrounded by love and care from her older brother Thomas and sister Jessica, who adored her and enjoyed spending time with her. The Sullivan family was financially comfortable, and her parents made sure their children received a top-tier education while encouraging them to explore and develop their individual talents. But despite this outward stability, Meredith's life took a turn when she was still in middle school. Her parents decided to end their marriage. The separation was amicable, without major conflicts or legal disputes, and both Andrew and Faye remained actively involved in their children's lives. For Meredith, the divorce was an emotional blow, but she never felt neglected or unloved. She was kind-hearted, outgoing, and easily made friends. Her cheerful personality and engaging nature made her popular among peers. From an early age, Meredith excelled academically. School came naturally to her. She was curious, quick to learn, and always eager to take initiative. She was also artistic and developed a strong interest in painting. In addition to academics and art, she was highly active in sports, including rhythmic gymnastics and ballroom dancing. Later, in high school, she focused on cheerleading and eventually became the team captain. Even as a teen, Meredith was driven and focused. Confident and determined, she consistently worked hard to reach her goals. Yet, she remained fair and respectful to others, never resorting to dishonesty, which earned her admiration from classmates and teachers alike. After graduating from high school, Meredith enrolled at the University of Delaware, choosing to study corporate communications and social sciences. She quickly adapted to college life, stood out academically, and earned a merit-based scholarship. She remained involved in cheerleading and even gave presentations on the subject. She also played tennis, danced, and performed in university theater productions. During her junior year, Meredith landed an internship at a Philadelphia radio station. There, she worked in a relatively new field, managing the station's presence on social media platforms. This experience turned out to be a perfect match for her chosen career path, reinforcing her interest in communications. Meredith eventually became a member of an elite student organization, where she played a prominent role. She was already building connections and laying the foundation for her future professional network. For her senior project, she chose to focus on the journey of Joe Biden, producing a documentary film that gained notable recognition. The project even earned a nomination for a regional Emmy Award and opened doors for her in the media and communications industry. In 2007, Meredith graduated with a bachelor's degree and began working as a public relations assistant for Congressman Michael Castle. Determined to establish a political career, she soon took part in the election campaign of former finance executive Chip Flowers. Meredith's ambition and work ethic propelled her forward. She thrived in fast-paced environments and constantly sought intellectual growth. While still in college, Meredith met a young man named Luke Chapman. Slightly older than her, he was also a University of Delaware graduate. The two quickly connected and began a relationship. Meredith and Luke had much in common, Both were intelligent, ambitious, and deeply motivated. Like Meredith, Luke pursued a career in public service and became a member of the Newark City Council. For a time, their professional paths aligned, and they both made impressive strides in their respective fields. The couple earned a solid income and, not long after their wedding, purchased a spacious home in a peaceful and upscale neighborhood in Fairfield Crest. They decided to postpone expanding their family and instead focused on building careers in the political arena. They brought home a golden retriever, named him Indy, and cared for him with the devotion some would reserve for a son or daughter. After a few years, Meredith made a major career shift. She stepped away from politics and pursued a path in education. She earned a master's degree in education and returned to her alma mater, the University of Delaware, where she began teaching courses in public relations and digital marketing. She developed strategies for social media engagement and conducted research on evolving methods of communication. Alongside her teaching, she served on several university committees. In 2013, Meredith became director of marketing while continuing to lecture and publish academic work. Her colleagues and students spoke highly of her, praising her intelligence, professionalism, and relentless drive. Luke's career was also progressing. He worked long hours and took his responsibilities seriously. As time passed, both he and Meredith became increasingly absorbed in their individual goals. They were rarely home at the same time, and slowly but surely, distance grew between them. Despite how perfect things looked from the outside, their relationship had lost its spark. They no longer talked about starting a family, and the marriage became more of a formality than a partnership. Still, neither was in a rush to end the relationship. Their arrangement seemed to work well enough. They lived under the same roof, more like housemates than spouses, each managing their own finances and routines. There were no arguments, no confrontations. At public events, they appeared together and looked content. No one in their circle had any idea what was really going on behind closed doors. In 2016, Meredith decided to return to the political scene. This time, not as an assistant or staffer, but as a candidate in her own right. Ambitious and determined, she launched a campaign to challenge the sitting senator for Delaware's 8th District, Dave Sokola. Her campaign gained traction, and she had a strong shot at winning. In the end, though, she lost by a narrow margin of less than 5%. After the race, Meredith resumed her work in education, continuing to build her academic career. By 2017, she decided to bring on an assistant, a creative director, to manage marketing efforts under her leadership. She posted the job opening online and soon received a wave of applications. Meredith personally interviewed each candidate, but one stood out: a 49-year-old man named Mark Gerardeau. He met every requirement: experience, credentials, and the skill set needed for the role. During the interview, he made a strong impression and agreed to start work right away. Mark was living in North Carolina at the time, but was willing to relocate for the opportunity. He had been married for nearly 25 years to a woman named Jenna Gerardo. For the time being, she stayed behind to handle the sale of their home and wrap up other responsibilities before joining him in their new location. Mark turned out to be a thoughtful, intelligent, and well-educated individual with a strong background in marketing. He exceeded expectations from the very beginning. He and his new supervisor quickly established a great working relationship, finding common ground almost instantly. Mark was 16 years older than his young boss. At the time, both of them were still legally married, but neither let that fact get in the way. Meredith had grown emotionally distant from the husband she had spent nearly a decade with, as both were consumed by their professional lives. Mark's situation was even more complicated. He had been married to his wife for nearly 25 years and had remained committed throughout that time. As co-workers, they grew close without even realizing it. Their collaboration was smooth, and they shared an unspoken understanding. Mark was reliable, efficient, and skilled. But behind their professional synergy, something deeper was beginning to form, unnoticed by those around them. To Meredith, Mark became more than just a trusted colleague. She felt she could confide in him, not just about work, but about her personal thoughts and emotions. That meant a lot to her. In the constant rush for success, she had little time left for friends, family, or even meaningful conversation. Even her husband had become more of a stranger than a partner. But with Mark, she felt calm, safe, and understood. Eventually, she stopped resisting and invited him to spend time together outside of work. Just 2 weeks after Mark relocated to Newark, Meredith suggested they meet up after hours and relax at a local bar. She wanted to talk away from the workplace in a more casual setting. During that evening, Mark opened up to her, and for the first time, he shared his story. Mark Gerardo was born in 1968 and was the oldest child of Leonardo and Esther Gerardo. His parents were strict and deeply religious, raising their large family with firm expectations of obedience and discipline. From a young age, Mark learned the value of hard work and also excelled academically. At 18, Mark first met his future wife, Jenna Cox. She was 16 at the time and working as a waitress at a fast food restaurant. Mark began stopping by regularly, drawn to the girl behind the counter, but he never found the courage to talk to her or express how he felt. Eventually, Jenna and her family moved to a neighboring town, and the two lost contact for several years. In 1990, they crossed paths again, this time at a local shopping center where Jenna was working as a sales associate. Mark was thrilled to see her again, but still too shy to make a move. Sensing this, Jenna took the lead and asked him out first. Their relationship progressed quickly. They began dating seriously, and in 1992, Mark proposed. Jenna said yes without hesitation, and less than a year later, they were married. The newlyweds settled in Indianapolis, Indiana, where they bought a home together. By that time, Mark had earned a degree in graphic design and secured a well-paying job in his field. Jenna worked as a real estate agent, and the couple enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle. Although they never had children of their own during their many years of marriage, they adopted 3 dogs and treated them like family. To friends, neighbors, and relatives, Mark and Jenna seemed like a perfect match. They appeared deeply in love and genuinely happy. There were no public arguments, and their home was known for its peace and harmony. Both partners were strong, independent individuals with steady incomes and stable lives. But by the mid-2000s, teens, after more than 2 decades together, the Gerardos hit a rough patch. During that time, Mark lost both of his parents in a short span, and Jenna, who had invested heavily in launching her own business, faced a serious financial setback. Faced with mounting emotional and financial strain, the couple decided it was time for a major life change. They sold their home and moved to the quiet town of Greenville, South Carolina. Mark quickly found a solid job in marketing in their new city, while Jenna chose to step back and focus on home life until she found the right opportunity. During that period, they traveled extensively and spent more time together. The emotional distance that had once crept in seemed to fade. Their relationship regained its spark, and for a year and a half, they enjoyed what felt like a second honeymoon. In 2017, Mark began exploring new job prospects, hoping to find a role that was more fulfilling and offered better pay. That's when he came across a job posting from Meredith. He applied, and the position required relocating to another state. The couple wasn't intimidated by the move. Mark left first, since the job required him to start immediately, while Jenna stayed behind to handle the sale of their home and finalize local matters. She was planning to join him in Newark about a month later. That evening, as Mark shared his story with Meredith, she listened attentively. Then she opened up about her own journey, her professional achievements, and the quiet unraveling of her marriage. As the conversation went on, they found themselves relating on a deeper level. There was a growing sense of familiarity, as if they had known each other for years. They felt they could trust one another completely. They stayed at the bar late into the night, and afterward went back to Mark's apartment, where they spent the night together. From that moment on, a private relationship began to develop, one that remained hidden from those around them. They continued seeing each other in secret, often meeting at Mark's rental while his wife was still living out of state. For Meredith, there didn't seem to be any real obstacle to starting a romance with Mark. Her marriage to Luke had long since become a formality. Both of them had moved on emotionally. But for Mark, things were far more complicated. First, he had never been unfaithful in his entire 25-year marriage. Second, he found himself unexpectedly falling for Meredith, who was significantly younger than him. And third, he was well aware that she was still legally married, just as he was. Despite everything, the relationship between Meredith and Mark continued even after Jenna moved to Newark. From the start, Jenna sensed something wasn't right. She felt that another woman had already been inside their new home, though she chose not to confront her husband immediately. Instead, she decided to gather information and confirm her suspicions. Mark frequently stayed late at work and became increasingly distant at home. When questioned, he blamed exhaustion and a heavy workload. Physical closeness between them had nearly disappeared. This went on for months until Jenna finally asked him directly if he was seeing someone else. Mark denied everything. He did try to end the affair with Meredith at one point, but the connection between them proved too strong. After a brief pause, they resumed meeting in secret. Meredith, meanwhile, made up her mind. She had a conversation with her husband Luke, and they both agreed to move forward with a peaceful divorce. On February 14th, 2018, Valentine's Day, Jenna confronted Mark. She told him she knew about his relationship with his boss. It turned out that she had hired a private investigator who had followed Mark, captured incriminating photos, and documented the places where he and Meredith met. With the evidence mounting, Mark had nowhere to hide. Still, he tried to explain himself, promising Jenna that he would end the relationship in an attempt to salvage their marriage. But the promise was short-lived. He continued seeing Meredith, now with added caution. Jenna didn't believe him. She continued tracking his movements, placing a GPS device in his car and installing monitoring software on his phone and computer. Tensions rose. When Mark discovered the tracking device in his vehicle, he realized he could no longer delay a decision. He told Jenna that he had fallen in love with Meredith, wanted to be with her, and planned to file for divorce. For Jenna, who was 47 at the time, this was a devastating blow. They had spent nearly 25 years together, and now her husband was leaving her for a younger woman, his boss. On top of that, she had yet to find work in the unfamiliar city they had just moved to. She was left without financial stability, emotional support, or a sense of direction. Her world was unraveling, and she was on the edge emotionally. By early March 2018, Meredith had finalized her divorce from Luke. She was no longer bound by any commitments and expected Mark to follow through as well. But things were more complicated on his end. Due to the specific legal requirements in their new state, Mark had to meet a residency threshold before he could file for divorce. They had only recently relocated. While waiting out the required period, Mark moved out of the home he shared with Jenna and into Meredith's apartment. Around the same time, Meredith resigned from her position at the University of Delaware. She was set to become Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer at Villanova University, one of Pennsylvania's most prestigious institutions. In addition, she had been offered a leadership role at Ruffalo Noel Levitz, a major consulting firm focused on higher education strategy. On April 5th, Meredith Sullivan moved into her new home, located in Radnor Township, Pennsylvania. She was slowly settling in, and about a week later, Mark joined her. He had also left his previous job and transitioned to Villanova University, where he began working as Meredith's personal assistant. It seemed like a fresh start for the couple, a new chapter filled with promise. All that remained were a few final steps to officially move forward. But neither of them had any idea that a deadly threat was already looming. Jenna, feeling deeply hurt and betrayed, had begun putting together a disturbing plan for revenge. On April 23, 2018, Mark and Meredith had made plans to meet at a local restaurant to celebrate their new beginning. Meredith stopped by her house beforehand to change clothes, while Mark placed the order and waited for her to arrive. Time passed, but Meredith didn't show. She wasn't answering her phone, and Mark started to feel uneasy. Then, out of nowhere, he began receiving unsettling messages from Jenna. Her words were full of anger and bitterness. She wished him a life of misery. And then came a photo that stopped him cold. It was a picture of Meredith's kitchen. Terrified, Mark dropped everything and rushed to Meredith's house. When he arrived, her car was parked in the driveway. Just down the street, a black Chevrolet was parked, but Mark didn't think much of it at the time. The lights were on inside the house, and the front door was unlocked. But once he stepped inside, everything went silent. He walked straight to the kitchen and froze in horror. Lying on the floor, in large pools of blood, were the lifeless bodies of Meredith and Jenna. It was too late to help them. Both had suffered fatal gunshot wounds. Mark screamed and ran outside. The noise drew the attention of nearby neighbors, who immediately called emergency services. At first, investigators considered the possibility that Mark himself might have been responsible, caught in the middle of emotional turmoil and a complicated relationship. But that theory was quickly ruled out. The weapon was found beneath Jenna's body, and it had only her fingerprints on it. Authorities determined it to be a planned act, followed by voluntary self-harm. Shortly before the incident, Jenna had sent several emails to a close friend. The content strongly indicated she was planning to do something extreme. Evidence later revealed that she had spent about 2 weeks preparing. She had purchased a firearm, rented a car, and gathered items for disguise. Jenna had managed to find Meredith's new address on her own. She spent a full week watching the couple's movements. Neighbors later reported seeing a strange woman in a wig, driving a black Chevrolet, and loitering around the neighborhood. Still, she didn't appear threatening. Even Mark recalled noticing the car, but assumed it belonged to someone local. Sullivan had studied the couple's schedule and knew exactly when they usually returned home. On that day, she arrived early, parked her vehicle a few blocks away, and made her way to the house. She forced entry by breaking a window from the backyard and sneaked inside. It's believed she intended to confront and take the lives of both Mark and Meredith, then end her own. But her plan didn't go as expected. Meredith arrived at the house alone. Later, investigators uncovered that Meredith had taken out a life insurance policy about 1.5 years earlier, valued at $500,000. The listed beneficiary was her ex-husband, Luke. When the divorce was finalized, the beneficiary designation had not been updated. Because of this, Luke Chapman became a person of interest in the investigation, as authorities explored whether he might have had any indirect involvement in the incident. However, this theory was ultimately dismissed due to lack of evidence. No one to blame? The investigation lasted only a few days. Authorities soon closed the case, determining that the person responsible was no longer alive and that no additional suspects were involved. Mark was cleared of any wrongdoing, but found himself under intense public and media scrutiny. Instead of retreating from the spotlight, he chose to speak openly. He gave interviews, appeared on talk shows, and discussed the events in detail. A year later, Gerardo published a memoir recounting his relationships with both women and the events that led to the tragic outcome. He shared how the experience had affected him emotionally, stating that he never imagined the woman he had spent nearly 25 years with could be capable of something so devastating. Although the book became a bestseller and was well received by readers, public opinion was divided. Some accused him of taking advantage of both women and, later, profiting from their deaths by turning the tragedy into a personal narrative. As for Luke, Meredith's family filed a lawsuit against him after he refused to return the life insurance payout he received following her death. The court ultimately ruled in his favor, requiring him to return only 10% of the total amount to her relatives. The judge determined there was no malicious intent on his part. Since Meredith clearly hadn't anticipated the end of her life, she hadn't made changes to the policy. After her passing, Meredith Sullivan's remains were cremated, and the urn was entrusted to her parents. Jenna Geradeau was laid to rest in her hometown of Fort Wayne, Indiana. To this day, many believe that Mark was also meant to be a target that night, and that he narrowly escaped a fatal ending. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.